Hello, and welcome to the Mastering the Hustle interview series. I'm your host, Joel Calkins, and today I'm joined by Michael Dix, who is the founder and CEO of Intentional Futures. Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. Would you mind taking a minute just to tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do?
Sure. So I lead Intentional Futures, and we just had our 14th anniversary. So I've been at this for quite a while. We are a creative and strategic consultancy that focuses on innovation. We recently became a B Corp, which is an interesting process that involved us a lot of self-reflection, but really ultimately acknowledged a lot of the inherent social value that comes through in all of our projects and in our practices. So we are based in Seattle. We're about 35 people. We have a really interesting range of for-profit and nonprofit clients. And the quality of the projects we get to work on, the challenges we wrestle with is pretty incredible. And that's what just keeps me going this long. I didn't think I would be at it this long. When I formed the company, I had a vision of converting it into a platform for launching startups. And we have done that, but it is not our primary focus.
Fantastic. So you mentioned a little bit of the social side, and I noticed you've done a lot of like social entrepreneurship work. Why is that important to you, and how has that shaped the way that you've crafted your business?
I mean, I think it's just fundamentally what is motivating why work in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It is to drive some positive change in the world, make a small dent in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It was why I joined Microsoft, which is where I was before here, finding ways within a large organization to improve the lives and productivity of people at scale. I was leading Windows Client product management team there, which had over 1 billion customers, which is like everyone who can fog a mirror is a customer, and thinking about how you can rationalize all of their many needs in a coherent way. It was intellectually stimulating and also quite worthy. And now we have a much brighter line towards positive impact to people.
No, that's great. That's great. And so you mentioned that you were at Microsoft and then you kind of ventured out on your own. What caused you to want to do that, like, and make that leap?
I loved working at Microsoft, constantly pushing myself and wrestling with new challenges. And when I felt my learning was plateauing a bit, I felt the need to make a change. That was after about 8 years. And I took a sabbatical. Second time I've done this in my life, where I've left an incredible gig, usually in tough economic times, and just said, I need some space. I want to take a break, clear my head, and be receptive to new opportunities that would come along. And I had the confidence that if I listened and was open enough, something would come up. And I've always had an entrepreneurial bug ever since I was a little kid. I never had the guts to go do it. And it took me until my early 40s to make that leap. And I can't imagine going back. So I was mid-sabbatical. I was going to take a little over half a year. I managed to take 3 months before a friend and former colleague at Microsoft reached out about a really interesting set of challenges that Bill Gates wanted to tackle. This was shortly after he left Microsoft, stepped down, and opened up what was called BGC3 at the time. It's now called Gates Ventures. And I met with Larry, and he talked to me about several projects. And I surprised myself by saying, because one of them really sung to me, that I would cancel an upcoming trip to India, and I just wanted to work on this thing. And that project was, it's still one of the best projects I've ever had the good fortune to work on. It's called Big History Project. I can tell you just a little bit about it because I'm sure it would light you up too. It's basically, it was a novel course that explored the full history of the universe from the Big Bang till now, incorporating all the sciences and humanities. So it was an amazing way to learn about everything and to connect all these disciplines together. And the challenge was to turn that into a public good that advanced the state of the art on digital learning, advanced 21st century skills for high school students everywhere, and would stoke their own fire for learning. So it was just very exciting. We worked on that for 3 years, which is what I used to create Intentional Futures initially, and it led to so many other things.
Wow. So yeah, just a simple project, right, to get you started.
Yeah, really easy.
No big deal.
No, one of those great projects where you are lost in the woods and confused often. And that's, to me, I talk about this at IF, that's always the sign of something really worthy. If you have high confidence and you feel like you know the answer right at the beginning and that doesn't change as you're going through it, something's wrong. It's not an interesting enough problem space, or you're being a little too pat and complacent in how you're approaching it.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting work is the ones where you have a problem and you're not quite sure how to solve it, and you get to dive in, which kind of leads in, because I know you're really focused on innovation within Intentional Futures, and so that you really did cut your teeth on something extremely innovative. Why do you love the innovation space, and why does that speak to you so much?
I think it goes back to what we were just talking about. You're wrestling with unsolved problems that are inherently difficult, where you have a lot of ambiguity, and you can't simply rely upon tried and true solutions. And so for me, that demands that you push yourself, that you get imaginative and analytical, that you take risks, and that you collaborate, because there's no way you could solve that on your own. And all of those qualities describe the kind of organization that Intentional Futures is and how we approach our work.
Yeah, you talk about that collaboration space, and it's especially true in innovation. As you started to grow out Intentional Futures and you were putting that together, how did you decide what kind of team you wanted to build around you?
I had a vision for Intentional Futures at the beginning that was less about the work and methodologies we would do, although that fascinates me and is a driver. And it was more about the kind of culture that I wanted. And that was based upon experiences I had had in the past, both good and bad, that instructed me about the kind of environment where I think people could do their best work. And so this was about not putting people in rigid roles where they are only asked to do one thing. You're a designer, you're only allowed to think about design or to, make pretty pictures and bring our ideas to life. I want you to bring your full set of capabilities and stretch yourself. And so I call it lots of soft hats that people wear. And I wanted an environment where collaboration was celebrated, where there was no territorialism, and where there wasn't a dominant domain that was suppressing other domains that were important for innovation. And so I stuck to that and made very drastic moves when people had a hard time adhering to these ideas, and started creating territories and getting in that sort of internal battle. So we try to create an environment that is highly inclusive and creative and draws upon as many of the talents of these individuals as possible. And so that's where I start. And we hire an eclectic mix of people with really interesting backgrounds. I call us kind of like lovable weirdos. They're all really smart, but they may have unconventional histories. And that diversity of thinking and ways of approaching work can be a real strength if you have the right system for it.
Yeah. So can I ask a little bit more about that system? Because I'm really interested in how you've been able to create these people from quote unquote different backgrounds, different disciplines, to solve problems unconstrained somewhat by their job title. How do you foster that innovation, that collaboration? Because I know a lot of companies struggle with that.
Yeah, I think part of it is psychological safety, to take chances, and that's something you're constantly working on. Because everyone comes in with feeling like a little bit of an imposter, particularly if you're trying to push them to stretch. And if you show them that it is not only just okay, it's required that you take chances, and that you have kind of right-sized failures, and that we're constantly learning and trying new things, that's essential. We have practices, but we trade people across practices on projects all the time. So there's fluidity in assigning people to work with different people and learn on the job is key. And we also have a very high quality bar for what we ultimately ship.
Mhm.
And so that means you can play and you can make mistakes, but you have to bring it home, and you have to have really thorough, substantiated thinking coupled with really imaginative ideas that are going to change the way clients maybe even think about the problem or what might be possible as a solution.
That's great. So I want to go back to your story a little bit. You mentioned you left Microsoft, you took a sabbatical, and you started Intentional Futures in your 40s. Is that right? Did I understand that correctly?
Yep.
I think a lot of people kind of get to that point in their life, or they're in that point in their career, and they want to do something new, but they're weighing the risks. What would you say to somebody that's kind of trying to weigh that option of, do I go out and do my own thing? Is it too late? Do I have what it takes? Like, what would you tell them?
I would say a few things, and I could think about talking to my younger self.
Yeah.
If you have the drive to do something entrepreneurial, do it. Trust yourself. Take the leap. And I think most startup stories or entrepreneurial stories involve someone having deep conviction, and then if they're succeeding, the ability to deeply listen and respond to the market. You're always pivoting and adjusting. We are a very different place than what we were when we started. I can look backwards and tell you with clarity what the through line is, but there was a lot of ambiguity, and I learned to love that. Loved just responding and adapting to what's necessary while sticking to your principles and some of the core ideas. And I think if you do that, you can go a long way. I love to collaborate too. So bringing in partners it felt like the right thing at the beginning. Now I would have the conviction to do that, but actually just drive it more on my own. So I could, sorry, we can cut that out, but I can say more about sort of what it means to be, what I think it means to be entrepreneurial or a leader in that context too.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. Often when people think about, starting their own business or kind of moving into the entrepreneurial space, there's a lot of ideas of what that might look like. For some people, it might be, I'm my own boss. I make all the decisions. Maybe I get to choose and have complete autonomy over my time. What are some of those things that you learned about being the leader, the founder, the CEO of a company that maybe you didn't realize when you went into it?
I think there's a pretty long list. I think the first thing, and this is about leadership in general, is it's not about having the answers. It's about asking the right questions and setting up an environment where others, maybe in collaboration with you, can develop really good answers. Because that's what creates a platform for people to grow and do excellent work with you. So it's being more of a lighthouse than, constantly managing stuff. And that took me a little while to make that flip. Microsoft was quite different. It was fun intellectual debates where you had to win the arguments as opposed to sort of activating other people's ideas and thinking, which is a lot of what we do internally and with clients. I think there's also, this might sound a little arcane, but there's a difference between complex and complicated problems. And I don't think I fully understood the difference initially. A complicated problem is one that can be fully understood, even if it has 1,000 moving parts. You could think, a Swiss watch. You can diagnose a problem and fix it with pretty high confidence. And once you know how to do that, do it again and again. And a complex problem is unknowable in many ways. It may have emergent properties. You can think raising a 5-year-old, the traffic or weather, many, many human endeavors. And if you don't understand the difference, you're going to use the wrong techniques to solve them. And so what we've gotten better at is understanding a lot of the problems we're dealing with are actually complex in nature. One more round of research is not going to make the difference. What you need to do is actually take action, perturb the system, listen and learn, and then keep adjusting. And you could think of the entrepreneur's job as the same thing, because the organism that is your company is complex in nature. So that's a very, very important lesson. And then I think we spent a lot of time early on defining our values and our culture and all of that. And in good times, when the sun's shining and everything's falling into place, it's very easy to feel great about that and feel like you really mean it. It's in the hard times, like the pandemic, where that gets tested. Your business is under duress, and how much do you really care about creating livelihoods for people who work for you versus generating profit or other things? Those are the tests where you really have to make hard decisions, and your convictions shine through.
Yeah. So that's a really good point. When you say like a lot of companies, will write their values out. I think living those out, and especially displaying those in very hard times, they're not always perfect. So how did you stick to those values that you laid out for your team, for your company during those hard times? And what were some of the trade-offs, maybe they're just mentally in your own mind, that you had to make to maintain those values in like, let's say, the COVID-19 tough times?
Yeah, the COVID-19 period was super challenging because the business environment changed overnight. Our pipeline, which we managed pretty carefully, looked great, looked just like it did before, lots of awesome stuff. It was moving at a third of the pace. We discovered over time. And so what looked to be healthiness was not. And it created a lot of stress and a lot of existential questions. Are we still needed by the market? How long is this going to last? Do we lay a bunch of people off? And I manage a group of fellow leaders. We've had this going for almost a decade, where we get together monthly and talk very openly about all of our troubles, challenges, ideas, how we manage the business. It's been invaluable for me. In that period of time, almost all of them made very quick changes to reduce their workforce, furlough people, cut benefits, freeze salaries. And I asked myself, is that the kind of place we want to be? We had a rainy day fund. It was raining pretty hard outside. I was like, I think we have to tap that. And we actually increased benefits, preserved every single job, doubled down on our own innovation, and built out new practices, and decided we we're going to ride it out with the idea that we could emerge stronger than ever. And that sounded great, felt great a lot, but I'll confess there were nights where I was worried and thinking I'm just insane, and how long can I keep this going? I'm happy to say that we've pushed through that, and these bets, which tested our convictions and what we really care about, ended up paying off really nicely in terms of our own capabilities and our culture and the conviction everyone has. And one of those ideas that kept me going was I thought of one of our primary purposes is to actually create livelihoods for people and to enable them to grow and self-actualize. And if you start thinking about the reason why you exist in that way, makes it a lot easier to say, hey, we'll break even, maybe we'll lose some money for a while. We're still delivering on that core purpose, and we will come through this. So that's an example.
Yeah. I imagine that spoke volumes to your team. They're uncertain. They probably have friends or family members that are, potentially been laid off or let go because of those uncertain times. How did that change the dynamics of the culture of your company when you actually, it was trial by fire and you stayed true to those convictions? Like, how did that impact your team, and how is it stronger now?
I think it's still unfolding, but the things that I've heard and observed are people appreciated the radical transparency we had, because it wasn't that we just did this in the dark and pretended like nothing was happening. We said, look, this is a really challenging time. Here is how we're choosing to respond to it. And here are the metrics. Here the things are getting tough, so we have to hit these certain business metrics, or we will have to make some moves. Because we can't do this forever. Here's what those targets are. Here's the moves we will make, and we will update you monthly on how we're doing. And people really appreciated that, and we ended up getting through it without, for the first time, not paying bonuses,
Mhm.
but not eliminating any headcount, not eliminating any other benefits, and having an opportunity to actually make up the bonuses in the future that we put out there. So I know that people appreciated that. They still felt with us
Mhm.
stress over whether they
Sure.
can make it, but I think that was unavoidable. And it was kind of the right kind of stress where they weren't in the dark wondering what's happening. It was more about like, are we collectively going to be able to achieve
Yeah.
what we need to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that transparency with your team is really important. I was talking with a client yesterday about their strategic plans going forward, and really kind of pushing him to, show that plan to his team, and so they can understand it, they can rally behind it. And so there's something that's really powerful when a leader stands up and says, here's what's going on, this is what we have to do. And often we surprise ourselves, our team will surprise us by how much they can understand it and grab a hold of it and get on board. And so, kudos to you for being that transparent and taking the lead in that way. So COVID-19 happened, you worked through that. Like you said, it's still unfolding. Like, what are the new challenges that you're facing now in 2024?
Well, we have now that things are, it's been a good year so far. Looks like that's accelerating. We are aspiring to grow, and the reasons we want to grow is not just economic, but it enables our system as a platform for people
Mhm.
to be even healthier, where you can move around more and there's greater opportunity for folks. So that will bring a set of challenges. How do you grow well
Yeah.
and preserve the culture while being open to changing?
Mhm.
So that's sort of a large unknown set of challenges that we are going to be grappling with. We also have a bunch of new areas that we're investing in,
Mm.
including what we call intentional culture. So the same ideas that we use to manage our culture, turning that into a set of services with some really interesting methodology to help leaders turn culture into like a strategic tool for
Mhm.
their business, as opposed to something that they recognize as being important, but have no good ways to manage effectively.
Yeah.
So we've got a whole set of capabilities that we are offering now along those lines. We've been investing in stakeholder capitalism quite a bit, and with the idea that every organization, whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit, operates within and depends upon an ecosystem of stakeholders to succeed. And the more that they tend to their needs, the better they will do with their own ambitions. And that there are methodologies for understanding and engaging stakeholders and inviting them into the process. We're taking that further through regenerative business design. So thinking more completely and long-term about all of the positive and negative impacts that your business has. So that's a new area. So I bring these up because they're exciting. They're not well trodden yet, and there's
Mhm.
another opportunity to innovate and help our clients and partners figure out how to put these ideas into practice better.
Yeah, just the concepts of stakeholder capitalism, like you said, and regenerative business design. I don't think a lot of people are familiar with those terms. So, but it's probably something that it would be good to know, and I'll be really eager to hear how that plays out for you guys as you're kind of moving into, again, another innovative space, as you venture forth. Michael, this has been such a great conversation. I guess one last question for you, if I may. Um, as somebody who is in the process of launching a new company, maybe trying to think about services that they would want to offer potential clients, what advice would you have for them in terms of identifying the right products and the right services to fit that ideal client?
Yeah, I'll answer this based on things we're experiencing now as
Yeah.
we stand up these new practices. We've made the mistake of doing too much of the work internally and over designing the solution
Hmm.
and then going out and trying to sell that, as opposed to focusing on the need and deeply understanding that, and finding clients who are willing to co-create with you the solution. So we can bring methodology, but it's really through applying it with clients in real situations that you can understand what works and what doesn't. And we have made the mistake a couple times of spending too much up front before we actually get into it. And that's, I mean, it's the same idea of managing complexity, where you want to, perturb the system, try things in the real world, and listen and adjust.
Absolutely. Get your ideas out there, see how the market responds, see how your clients respond. That'll tell you a lot more than sitting in a room trying to come up with the right perfect idea, the perfect plan. So, well, Michael, thank you again. I do appreciate it. I look forward to hearing how Intentional Futures continues to grow, how you chart new space. And so again, thank you, and I wish you the best.
Great to talk with you. Thanks for having me, Joel.